People used to point and stare at me when I would run around the beach with a seaweed scarf or a big, kelp string. And they thought I was so weird, but who's laughing now when I found out that seaweed is a powerful glucagon-like peptide 1 inhibitor? All right, the short answer of what I'm talking about here is seaweed has an impact on carbohydrate utilization and has a potential impact on insulin sensitivity and insulin resistance. Now, I know I mentioned glucagon-like peptide 1, but what glucagon-like peptide 1 is essentially a peptide that is secreted in our GI tract when we are consuming food, okay? And it affects how we absorb carbohydrates, it affects how we absorb fuel in general, and it definitely affects satiety. Generally speaking, we want glucagon-like peptide 1 to be high. So knowing that, we can go into some detail here with seaweed and kelp and find that it's very powerful metabolically speaking. Before we dive deeper, you can save 30% off your entire grocery order through Thrive Market, an online membership-based grocery store. So you click that link down below and that's going to take you to Thrive Market where you'll save 30% off your whole grocery order. So pick and choose whatever food you want in your shopping cart and save 30% off at checkout. Plus, you get to choose a free gift worth up to $50. The cool thing is you can sort by different diet type. So it's not like it's just a regular simple grocery store or anything like Amazon. It's very intuitive and it's based upon different types of dieting. So like keto or paleo, whatever, and you can sort by that and then it just gets delivered to your doorstep in a couple of days. Super convenient, and you can't beat the 30% price break by using the link that's with my video here down below in the description. Okay, so the first study we have to look at was in the Journal of Applied Phycology. Okay, this is really fascinating. What they found is that when they looked at ethanol extracts of green algae, okay, they saw that there was a pretty dramatic increase in what is associated with glucagon-like peptide 1 synthesis. So that means what it actually takes to create glucagon-like peptide 1 is actually extracted from green algae. So when you look at this, you look at things like seaweed, you look at other algae like spirulina, things like that, we might have a really powerful mechanism there to help out our satiety signals, but also help out how our body utilizes carbohydrates better. Now what we have to look at is after glucagon-like peptide 1 is released, GLP-1, it slowly starts to break down. And it gets broken down by something called dipeptidyl peptidase. Now, this is very important because without this, glucagon-like peptide 1 would just stay elevated all the time. We'd have no appetite and things would be all cattywampus. But what they did find in some other research is that ethanol extracts of kelp can actually inhibit up to 90% of this DPP. What that means is we're stopping the breakdown of glucagon-like peptide 1 to a maximum degree without stopping it entirely. So it looks like kelp and algae, so things like seaweed and kelp, are super, super powerful for helping this system out. The other piece we have to look at, though, is the fact that seaweed naturally contains iodine, which is very important for the synthesis of thyroid hormone. All of these things, even thyroid, have a direct relationship with insulin and our overall metabolism. So when I say it's a metabolic monster, it's because it's like a three-headed beast. Okay, we have the glucagon-like peptide 1 synthesis, we have the DPP inhibition, and then we have this thyroid part of the equation, right? But then we have to understand, like, okay, well, what does this have to do with insulin resistance? Well, this is where it gets interesting. There was a study that was published in the Brazilian Journal of Medical and Biological Research that found that when you look at glucagon-like peptide 1, it is a potent inhibitor of inflammatory markers. Like you don't see as much tumor necrosis factor 1 alpha, you don't see as much interleukin 6 or interleukin 1 beta, which are inflammatory cytokines or signals that we see elevated in people that have high levels of inflammation. Inflammation acts as like a static. It's almost like a, static over a radio where you can't really hear what's going on, and it impedes the insulin signaling. So it impedes the ability of an insulin receptor to see the insulin going through the bloodstream and be triggered by it. So it's like, hey insulin, I'm over here, I'm a cell, do you see me? Come knock on my door so the glucose can get in, except for the fact that womp womp, it's too foggy and that insulin just continues to cruise by willy-nilly. It doesn't get to the cell, right? So that's kind of what's going on. So When we have glucagon-like peptide 1, it seems to have a correlation with lower levels of inflammation. Correlation does not equal causation, but still fascinating nevertheless. So seaweed is one of these things that might not be a bad thing to add in. And one quick other thing to add, it has beta-glucans in it. Beta-glucans are a very unique kind of fiber. There are 250,000 glucose molecules bound together into a very almost inseparable bond that the gut has to break down. So it's tremendous fodder for our gut bacteria, which also has an impact on glucose tolerance and utilization. So we have this five-headed beast, and I really do think that adding a little bit of seaweed to the diet would be a very powerful thing for satiety, for potential insulin resistance and sensitivity, and for the microbiome. As always, keep it locked in here on my channel. I'll see you tomorrow.